What's up, everybody? This is Ricardo Rodriguez.
And Matthew Messick.
And this is
the Profits Over Wages podcast.
Welcome to another episode of the Profits Over Wages podcast, where we do weekly interviews with highly successful business owners and entrepreneurs. We discuss life, business, and entrepreneurship to bring forward the lessons learned from success and failure, and most importantly, have fun while doing it. On episode 52 of the podcast, we sit down with Tony P. and Greg Dekalb. They are the co-founders of the wildly popular Tony P's networking events in Chicago and partners at Appointments IQ, a company that allows you to outsource your lead generation and appointment setting. On this episode, we talk about mastering the art of networking. Without further ado, Tony and Greg. But yeah, Ben, thank you guys for coming here. Thank you for setting this up. I know we should have probably done an episode of our podcast a while back. But I think it's about time that we did an episode with you guys.
No, great. Thanks. We're happy to be here.
Yeah, man. Really, thanks for making time to come out here. It's, because I've known you for about a year now, maybe?
Yeah. We met through a lot of friends through our real estate circles.
So for our listeners who don't know who you are, can kind of tell us just about who you are and what you do?
Yeah, so I'm Tony Paolella.
Is that how you say it?
Yeah. Yeah, I've heard Paella, Portillo, Palumbo, but it's Paolella.
When I read it Paella.
Yeah, exactly.
I see Tony P.
Gets butchered a lot. So Tony P's is a lot easier. And then got Greg over here. Tell his story.
Yeah, Greg Dekalb with Appointments IQ. I've known Tony for about 15 years now. Back when we were younger and got to go run around Chicago, be a little crazy. And then as we matured and what have you, we wanted to take that craziness and put some productivity behind it. So
for those people who are not familiar with like the Tony P events, if you can kind of like talk about that for a second.
Oh, sure. Yeah. So
because even you refer yourself as like Tony P in the third person, which is kind of weird.
Look, I have a Tony P event tonight. I'm like, you mean
that's
your
you.
event?
Yeah, it's kind of become a brand. But yeah, it all kind of came out of the business that me and Greg have done called Appointments IQ, which, we'll get a little deeper on that in a bit. But what it is we just go out a lot and we know a lot of people. And what we found is that the more events we went to and the more events we promoted, the more clientele that we acquired, more partnerships, and things just became easier. So we initially started just going to events and then promoting them and helping other people out, because I figured more people that go to the events, the more leads we can generate, the more clients we can find.
Yeah.
And ironically, it kind of became something where we'd go to so many and promote so many that people kept thinking they were our events.
I thought that they were your events half the time.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So people would come and be like, wow, it's been so cool. Thank you. Blah, blah. You did a great job. I'm like, I didn't do anything. I just invited you here. And then they're like, well, have you ever thought about doing events? I'm like, maybe. It's like, it's a lot of work. I don't know if I want to. I got a lot on my plate right now. And then when I told Greg about it, he's like, oh, yes, we're doing events. And I'm like, well, there's a lot involved. I mean, the finance, the operation, all this stuff. And Greg's like, hey, I got that. You just get people to show up. And so that's kind of how we divvied up. Greg does a lot of the work behind the scenes, all the back office stuff, and I focus on social media, ticket sales, and just the hype and the buzz to get people to show up and give them a reason to want to come. But I'll let Greg tell a little bit more about the nuts and bolts behind the scenes.
yeah, absolutely. And I think it really all started to make sense when we released like the formal newsletter. Because I know when you first started doing it, we were just sending out an email with a link to all the cool events, and then we got to a mass people subscribing to the newsletter, and it's like, okay, maybe we should formalize this a little bit and clean it up a little bit and make it a little bit more exciting. So when that started going out, we just noticed, more and more people signing up for the newsletter. And again, what Tony was saying, when we were going out to events, a lot of these folks would come up and say, great event. And it was like, hey, we're just helping people out, promoting, because we really believe in bringing people together. And, somebody put a bug in our ear about starting our own Tony P events, and kind of what Tony was saying, it's a lot of work, a lot of effort. And me, I was working on a couple of different projects as an entrepreneur, and felt that it was just a great opportunity to kind of take what we liked and didn't like about what's happening in the world of networking and the events happening right now, and put our own spin and our own vibe on it, and kind of see what happens. So we kicked off our first event in 2017 at Rocket, and that was just a cluster, if you will. But we had just an amazing amount of support and people that really wanted us to do it. And right out of the gate, we were bringing in a lot of traffic to the events, and right out of the gate, people were happy and meeting each other and
that's awesome.
Having a good time. So it just kind of it just grew from there.
So this pretty much started as a way to instead of going out to events, bringing people to you.
Yeah, and
to generate business, like you were saying.
Exactly, because in this day we live in, this day and age, we got fast Wi-Fi, we got our iPhones, we got laptops, we got social media, and I feel that sometimes people get kind of lazy. They kind of rely on that more than actual meeting people.
Yeah.
And I've been in sales for over 20 years, been mostly in the tech world, and I just learned that the more FaceTime I got with people, the more business actually happened. And also, if you connect with someone on a personal level, they're going to want to do business with you, because people do business with people they like and they trust and they feel confident in. And I don't know, because when you're on the phone or sending emails out, you're just like anybody else. But if you actually sit down with someone, especially if it's after business hours, you can get a lot more productive conversations, because it's 6 o'clock on a Tuesday night. People's phones aren't blowing up. They're not in front of the computer or not in their office with people knocking on their door and interrupting them. It's like you can have more productive conversations.
You actually get to make a relationship with who they actually are and not who they are at work.
Exactly.
Right? Like it's a total different persona most of the time.
Yeah, and not that I'm advocating, hey, you got to go out and drink a lot or anything, but if you're at a bar or restaurant and there's like a drink or two, it definitely helps, loosen people up. And and also what me and Greg definitely strive to do and meet people is to try not to talk about business when you first meet someone. Talk about, their kid's soccer team, or, how the Bears did last week, or just something that has nothing to do with business. So that way you connect on a more personal level. And that way it also makes you differentiate yourselves, because so many people in sales, they want to try and close a deal or do business right then and there. And it's just a little too presumptuous and too pushy and turns people off. So we're like, hey, we're just going to be fun guys. Let's hang out and get to know each other. If there's a business opportunity, great, let's pursue it. If there isn't, at least you made a new friend that night, and they might know someone, a neighbor, a relative, a coworker that might need what you have, and then they'll refer you because, like, hey, I met this fun person the other night who was a sales guy, didn't try and sell me,
Yeah.
Don't be that guy that goes up to everybody and just pushes business cards in their face and walks away.
Exactly.
Yeah. So kind of along those lines, we get that question often. Why go out to a networking event? I never meet anybody that translates into business. And for me, I always take a step back and explain it to them in a kind of a way it relates to them. And for me personally, we all want to go out. We all want to have fun and have good conversations with our friends and our coworkers and these type of things. And I was going out. I'd watch a football game with a buddy or what have you, and it just felt like, okay, you know what? I'm going out. I'm sitting next, to a good friend or what have you, but we're kind of having the same conversation over and over again, and it's kind of like, my time is valuable, and I enjoy spending time with my friends or what have you. But at the same time, they're competing with my family and these type of things. And I got a business to run, So how do the question is, how do I conduct business, be social, hang out with my friends, and be in a great atmosphere? And the answer is simple: networking events.
Yeah.
And I tell everybody, I said, hey, instead of going here or there with just one other person, come out to the networking event. if you feel like being social and meeting other people, that's what everybody is there for. Everybody's very welcoming, and everybody's just as interested in you as you are in them, But if you're not feeling that or what have you, just belly up to the bar and do what you would have done otherwise, And eventually, after maybe a couple more beers, you'll
liquid courage.
You'll feel more like engaging with some of the people around you, or a lot of times the people will come up to you because they want to get to know you. So
what businesses were you guys let's go back and because you said you've been in sales for how long?
About 20 years.
Let's kind of go back to where you started, kind of how you got
when
to
you were
where
a baby.
you're at today.
Well,
Did you grow up here in Chicago?
Yeah, I grew up in Arlington Heights. Went to Rolling Meadows for high school, University of Illinois for college, and ironically, how I got into sales, once again, it didn't really happen by a plan. I was a peer counselor in high school for my junior and senior year. So basically, I was kind of like a psychiatrist, psychologist for kids my age. Because the thing is that a lot of times kids would have problem at home or their grades or this or that, and they didn't feel comfortable talking to adults. They felt comfortable talking to someone their own age. And then if someone's a really extreme case, I'd refer them off, And then I did that for 3 years at U of I. I was a peer counselor sophomore, junior, senior year, and I was a psychology major, and I was on the track to get a PhD and be a clinical psychologist. That's what I was going to college for, to go on that path. And joined a fraternity and was a rush chairman for a couple of years, which is basically a recruiter / salesperson to get people to join, and it was just a natural fit. And so instead of pursuing a clinical psychology PhD, I became a sales guy instead.
Became Tony P.
The complete opposite.
Yeah, I became a sales guy instead. And I've always been fascinated by technology and the internet and, all the cool stuff out there, but I'm not a technical person. So I, spent most of my career working for different tech companies, some large ones and some medium-sized ones, and a few startups out in Silicon Valley. So I used to go to California a lot for that. And after a while, I just got burnt out. It's a pretty stressful career path because, as you guys know, the technology world we live in changes at a moment's notice. The hot new technology today could be obsolete in 6 months because a competitor comes out with something that's half the price, twice as fast, and whatever, and then you're done, And so me and Greg actually were just hanging out, having a couple of beers, meeting up with his brother. But before his brother got there, Greg was like, "Hey, I got this idea for a business." And he, literally, you hear this story all the time. People take out a napkin and start drawing on it, and that's how that's literally what he did. He took out a napkin, he's drawing some stuff. I'm like, a few minutes, I'm like, "What are you talking about?" And then he started getting more, into it. And that's how Appointments IQ became what it is. And then Tony P's events is part of Appointments IQ. So what I'll do is I'll have Greg kind of tell his background.
Yeah, let's talk about how did you get to the napkin moment? What did you do before that?
Yeah, great. How much time do you have? No,
we got 45 minutes, so you could go.
I'll be brief. For me, I would say I was a born sales marketing person out of the gate. Just every job I've ever had was always sales oriented. In college, I was the one who was selling the advertisements in the school newspaper. So I was sitting down with the bars and say, "Hey, no, we need to lower that special on the bucket of Coronas, man. Move it down to $10. Forget this $12 stuff. And then we'd go put the ad in the newspaper, and people would be thanking me for that. But at any rate, fast forward a little bit after school and after graduating in marketing. And always being involved with organizations, I think really helped me along in my career. So like student councils and these different type of things, always involved. And that's, I think, really backs into the Tony P later on because it's all about bringing people together and getting them off the couch, right? But at any rate, yeah, moved up to Chicago, got my true sales experience carrying around a phone book and working for R.H. Donnelly selling Yellow Page advertising door to door. So
That's
When
probably
was
the
that?
best sales training you could ever
You know
get.
what?
Door-to-door sales.
looking back on it now, I don't think anything could compete. I mean, they had an amazing training in all of this and how to handle objections and
Which is pretty much every person that you're going to talk to.
yeah. And this is, keep in mind, this is early 2000s, and I mean, phone books were, on their way out with the advent of, digital marketing and search marketing and so forth.
Yeah.
But we started dabbling into reselling pay-per-click and display advertising online, which really, for me personally, I saw the dollars go straight out of print advertising into digital advertising. So I followed that career path, and it led me into selling software for marketing solutions. So working with brands and agencies on how they leverage software to market and to syndicate advertising and figuring out the most efficient way to do that. Which led me to working with smaller and smaller organizations because they were the more dynamic, more creative, and I always wanted to have the cutting edge solution out there whenever I'm talking to potential advertisers. And kind of what Tony was saying with technology, advertising, works the same way. You got the shiny object one day, and then the next day a new technology comes along, and what your software is obsolete. So I was working for a startup out of Vancouver, and I was running an inside sales team. And one of the first tasks the CEO had for me was to really dissect and understand our ROI on our inside sales reps. Mm-hmm. Right? So at the time, they were making maybe 40 or 50 calls a day, and they were generating maybe one or two good meetings on a weekly basis.
Just 40 calls a day?
Yeah, I know, right?
That's it.
Yeah.
We have our
In an
guys.
hour?
We can have our guys here at the brokers. We get them set up with a 3-line dialer, so they're making like 80 calls an hour.
To say the least, the CEO knew that it wasn't a good ROI.
Right.
But
That's probably why he looked into it. He's like, what the hell's going on?
He didn't have it. He didn't fully understand why that was. So that was my task. And, coming from Yellow Pages, I knew right away. I was like, 150 calls a day minimum,
At least.
They see like 300 calls at an investment bank a day.
Yes.
Wow. Like that should be kind of the minimum. I feel like. Unless you're having like long conversations with people.
Absolutely. So, but instead of saying, hey, you guys need to increase the call volumes, there was other things missing. So, for example, they didn't have the proper software to market themselves. Mm-hmm. They weren't proficient with LinkedIn, and they didn't really understand the target audience and who they should be selling to. So it was a whole combination of different things. But at any rate, it led me on a path of going out, sourcing a software, bootstrapping the project, along with some training. And once we implemented this, I would say it's a combination of a methodology and software. The reps were booking 4 to 5 meetings on a weekly basis.
Nice.
Now, prior, the KPI, what we were really focusing on is, okay, what's our cost per meeting, right? And when we mapped out, at this current rate of 2 meetings per week, at their base salary of $50,000. Plus commission, plus, benefits, etc. It worked out to be about $750 per meeting that we were paying. And then when you start looking at, okay, well, what's our average close ratio and what's our margin, we're upside down on every one of the reps.
Yeah.
Right?
Oh, wow.
So instead of looking, taking this mass, project of turning around 4 reps, it's like, okay, how do we decrease that $750 number? How do we get that lower until we start seeing a positive ROI, right? So that in comes the software, in comes the methodology. Now the reps are booking 4 to 5 meetings a piece per week, and next thing you know, that cost per meeting goes down significantly, right? Yeah. Now the magical thing happened whenever we started getting more meetings. What it allowed us to do is to have more bats at the plate. right? So we took this hour-long presentation that we were doing. We realized, okay, nobody wants to listen to an hour-long presentation. It's exhausting to give an hour-long presentation. So we cut that down to 20 minutes, 5 minutes of discovery on the front end, 5 minutes of next steps on the back end, 30-minute call, and then we realized, all right, now we're getting more into what these people, what these prospects are really after, right? So needless to say, more business came, et cetera, et cetera. I was explaining this to Tony, the methodology and the software, and that's when we came up with the idea of Appointments IQ, because his network, he works with a lot of entrepreneurs, a lot of tech companies, and he's like, these guys could use this.
Oh yeah.
So then the question became, okay, how do we bundle this as a package, and how do we take it to market? And that's what really led us to doing all the networking. Tony was always doing it, but me, that's what really led me to doing all the network, is to going out to the marketplace and saying, hey, we got this interesting solution. Does it seem interesting? And a lot of these entrepreneurs, they run the business, they're doing a million things, they're thinking about growth. The last thing they want to do is make a bunch of calls or set up a prospecting and deal with a bunch of data. So we decided to take that off their plate, and now we have Appointments IQ, which is an on-demand sales team.
Nice.
Yeah. Can you go into depth about Appointments IQ?
Yeah.
Like the sales team aspect and all that stuff, and because I'm still kind of...
Yeah.
I'm personally a little confused. I thought it was just the events. Now it's like a sales team.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, shit. What's going on here?
Yeah, great question. So now we're going out to all these networking events, and we're introducing Appointments IQ, and basically the message is simple. Hey, your time is valuable. It should be focused on growing the business, strategic conversations, and building partnerships. Right. Instead of you having to deal with the prospecting and lead generation and appointment setting, you can outsource that to our team, and we'll do that heavy lifting for you. And to take it a step further, we'll create a model to where it's really affordable to you as well. So what we come up against is, okay, what does it make more sense to do? Go out and hire somebody at $50,000, give them a salary and everything else? Because the first thing people think whenever we need more sales, their knee-jerk reaction is, well, I need to get a salesperson.
Yeah.
And then they realize, wow, I don't have $50,000 in capital to hire a salesperson.
Plus benefits, plus all that stuff. It's not really 50 grand.
Exactly.
It's a lot more than that.
Yeah.
If you hire the wrong person, then what do you do? Turnover?
Got to start all over again.
And then 3 months after training this person and 3 months of paying their salary, you realize, wow, they're not going to work out. And then you got to be in the uncomfortable position of letting someone go. And then you got 3 months of money.
I mean, if they're
time.
not working out, it's not that uncomfortable. You're just not working out.
Yeah, well, maybe you're better.
You're a
with that than I
salesperson.
am.
You're a salesperson. You should be making sales.
You
Yeah.
need to leave. No.
So then so we recognize that a lot of businesses have this challenge, right? Because it's a big step to hire that first salesperson, right? So how do we gradually build someone into that? Well, the first thing is they got to have a full pipeline, okay? So that's the first thing we focus on, is driving leads, driving conversations, getting that pipeline filled, okay? And then the next step is, okay, once there's so many conversations going on, they can justify getting maybe a part-time salesperson, which is something else Appointments IQ offers, is contract to hire salespeople. So you can get this person at a fraction of what you'd pay them full time. And me as an organization and a firm, we're able to put that salesperson on 3 different projects, right? So they're getting what they would get for a salary, and they're just working on 3 different accounts,
right?
Kind of the agency model, right? And then the idea is, okay, you've worked with this individual, you like what they're doing in terms of setting up the meetings and what have you, now you want to hire them on full time. So then we just put on our recruitment hat and we say, okay, pay us the typical recruitment fee, and we'll put this person into your organization and shake hands. And when you're ready to get somebody else, let us know, and we'll start somebody else doing the lead generation.
That's kind of cool.
Yeah.
I had no idea. Until
Yeah.
that's what appointment IQs was.
Yeah, it's all about, meeting
That's
that
pretty awesome.
entrepreneur where they are without taking all their resources and taking a risk on one person that may or may not work out, and walking with them step by step. Now, how does this all pertain to Tony P's networking events, right? That's the question everybody's wanting to know and kind of what we're backing into. Well, we realized that all these businesses that we're working with, they have an appetite for getting exposure to the Chicago market.
Right, because you could have the best product in the world, but if nobody knows about it, then...
Exactly. And the second piece of it is when it comes to lead generation and appointment setting, probably one of the biggest objections you get is, okay, how do we know that our brand is going to be protected? How do we know you're not just going to go out and, damage the brand, right? So it's twofold. We bring our clients in and we give them sponsorship opportunities, give them exposure at these Tony P networking events. And at the same time, Appointments IQ has a booth there as well. So people that aren't familiar with us, obviously, there's an opportunity for us to get, it serves as lead generation for us. But probably the most important thing I relay to clients is, hey, if there's ever a question, if there's ever a concern, if there's anything, that you can always come and find me in person at a Tony P networking event. And I'll buy you a drink.
Nice. We'll take you up on that next time.
Yeah, and a key thing about that, too, that me and Greg always stress to people we've met with them talking about Appointments IQ is that, there's a lot of lead generation companies out there. There's tons. And quite a few of them are out of like the Philippines and India and other parts of the world where the cost is actually pretty inexpensive. But the old adage, you get what you pay for. But the other thing, too, that when we met with people, we had so many meetings, people were like, okay, well, why should we use you over these other options? I'm like, well, we're here in the room with you. It's like we're sitting here talking to you right now face to face. And a lot of these other companies that you can use, it's outsourced, different parts of the world or different parts of the country. And you're never actually going to meet these people in person. And it's like, we're here, we do these events once a month. I go, if you're unhappy or mad, it's like, we can't hide. We're easy to find. So, but at the end of the day, we're all about doing the best job we can, customer service, making sure you're happy. And so, it's in our best interest to really knock this out of the park for you. And if we're not doing it and it's not working, then we'll talk about it. We'll recalibrate. We'll try something different, So it's about that establishing rapport, making people feel comfortable, and let them know that we're real people. We're not, phone robots or anything, and we're not outsourcing this somewhere else. It's like we're here, we're local Chicago guys, and we're gonna help you grow your business.
What kind of companies do you guys work with right now?
Yeah, I would say the bulk of our business would be technology software companies. That goes into my background. So I'm familiar with it. It goes in Tony's background, so he's familiar with it. So we feel like we get a head start whenever we engage with those companies. Plus, they seem to be a little bit more cutting edge, and the entrepreneurs who we really really want to support. But we have clients that have every type of product and service you can imagine, from airtime on radio shows to engineered electrical tape to recruitment firms to gift marketing platforms. Credit card processing, you name it. And so what's nice is that the service is really agnostic as far as
any real estate
industry we could service. So we do have one caveat, is that we are B2B. So our clients have to be selling to other businesses. So if you are a real estate company and you're looking to engage with new real estate projects at a business level, that's one thing. But if you're an agent and you're looking to engage with consumers, that wouldn't be a fit for us. So
then how does all go into the Tony P events. So when did that start? And then kind of, if you can give a little bit more background on like where they are and kind of what's for the future for that and how many people are, go to the events.
Oh yeah, and and as we referenced earlier on, it kind of just happened by accident. I mean, it's something where I just realized that the best clients that we got for Appointments at Q were people that we already knew in our network, and it was simple math. It's like if we go to more events, we're going to meet more people that we can tell our story to that can become potential clients. And that's when I started, putting this newsletter together that I would send out once a week. And I'd have like 20 or 30, in a 2-week period, I have maybe like 10, 15 different events of a wide variety of industries. Like, hey, cool, check these out, And I'd go to a lot of them and I'd meet all these people. And then I put together a Facebook group called Tony P's Network Events Calendar, where I just would promote a bunch of events. And, right now we got probably, over 3,000 people in the group. And then the newsletter we send out once a week, send out about 4,500 people. These are all like local Chicago people. And how this all ties together is by doing that, it just started building a brand and a name and a following. And then when we flipped the switch and decided to start doing our own events, we had this built-in audience ready to go. So when we did our first event in August of 2017 at Rocket, we were expecting about 150 people. 275 showed up.
Oh wow!
And that was our first event ever. So, and it was funny because a lot of people that are there, they're like, "How long have you been doing this for?" I'm like, "This is our first event." But the thing is that by us attending so many events over the years and by promoting so many events over the years, we were kind of able to see what worked and what didn't work. So when it came time to do our own thing, I mean, the first one was August 2017. Greg wanted to do it like 6 months earlier, and he kept pushing me, and I'm like, I'm not ready, And I just wanted to make sure everything was lined up just right, because I didn't want our first event to be a huge bust, because then it would have been hard to recover from that. Yeah. So I just wanted to be sure that we had all our ducks in a row, and we're going to get a good turnout and some good buzz. And then it just kind of led into other venues, other sponsors. They, started contacting us over time. But it's a really simple formula. We just want to get smart, fun, interesting people, throw them in a room together, and proactively introduce them to each other, because it's different than most other events out there. Usually it's like you just go, you fill your name tag, you just get thrown in a room, and then whatever happens. But I know about 70-80% of the people that walk in the door, and I know their stories. And then the new people that we don't know, I want to learn their stories and start introducing them to other people in the room so they feel comfortable and they want to come back again. And then they tell their friends, like, hey, I went to this event, met these great people, and it's like no other event I've ever been to before. We want to, like I said, be different and unique and add value to every person that walks in.
So what makes the events different? Is that what makes the events different? Like what did you guys notice that actually worked when you were promoting other people's event to like that you implemented into your own events? Like what's that formula?
So just
not asking you to give the secret sauce.
No. I'll give you a real quick example of one of the things that I noticed by attending other networking events. There's one that's pretty popular here in Chicago, but the person who puts it on, he's never there. He's nowhere to be found. And you go there and you walk through the registration, and it's kind of a blah process, and then whatever happens, right? And I saw that as kind of an issue, because I think the first impression is the most important thing you can do.
Right.
And that's something you have control over and you can really own. So that said, there was a point where I said, you know what, Tony, I'm going to handle registration from here on out. When people walk in the door and they know they're going into a Tony P event, they're going to get a smile, a handshake from me personally. And, we have a great team member that helps us out with registration, which is very consistent, because, again, I think that first impression when people are coming to the event is extremely important. And there's so many little nuances kind of along those lines. And I think if you add them all together, it just creates an overall really awesome experience.
Cool.
No, yeah, I kind of going back to what you said too was that the story that says I go to a lot of networking events, but then it's like, I mean, I know how to network, but like people go to an event, it's like they sign in, then they kind of stand around, they wait, especially if they go by themselves. They're like, okay, well, I'm either going to wait for someone to come up to talk to me, or I'm going to got to find out how I can get into it. But then you just have a lot of people that are kind of just standing around waiting for someone to make the first move.
Just go to the bar.
Yeah. But yeah, if it's even at a bar in the first place. But I mean, yeah, so I mean, when you're there and you're hosting it and then you know half the people's stories, you know who to introduce to who. So then like when they're leaving there, if they got 3 to 5 connections that night, they're more bound to come back over and over again because they're getting something out of it instead of like, oh, I might have had a couple conversations with random people that I don't know. And then because they get the introduction, whoever you're introducing them to they're like, okay, you got that kind of that co-branding where you got the edification because you introduced them.
And you guys do them at cool places too, like the newer bars and that come up in Chicago and stuff like that.
Exactly, and that's all by design. So a couple of things is that, so we're not really reinventing the wheel. I mean, people have been doing events at bars and clubs for years, but a couple of things that I noticed is that if it's on a Tuesday or Wednesday night, these bars and restaurants and menus, they're far more flexible with how we can work with them because those are nights they're typically be kind of slow.
Right.
Whereas on a Monday night, no one really wants to go network on a Monday night. I mean, people do, but it's just not as many people. People are still recovering from the weekend. And then Thursday nights, I mean, that's a big fun night. So you're competing. It's a lot of other things going on in the city besides just networking. So we started doing them on Tuesday nights because the venues are easy to work with. But then we wanted to make sure, they're like cool, hip, trendy places. And you guys have been to some of our events. I mean, they tend to be in River North or the Loop because, we want to make sure it's easy for people to get to after work. And most people work downtown. And if they don't, you can take Ubers, you can take L's, you can take Metro trains. It's easy to get there because I'd say most of our events, a third of our audience works and or lives in the suburbs, and they train in or they drive and park, whatever. But the whole point is we want to make it easy for everybody. But then also because with River North, there's so many events that go on, like Hubbard and Kinsey at those bars and restaurants. What I tend to do myself when I go to other people's events is a lot of times I'll be at one place from 6 to 7:30, and then from 7:30 to 9 I'll go to this other event, which will be like a block away. So having them in River North or Loop is good because it's just that way or people won't be locked into your event the whole night. They can still have options, Whereas if you do it in other parts of the city, it's a little further out there, you're pretty much, someone's buying a ticket, they're going to be locked in for the whole night at your event, or they're just not going to come at all or they might go somewhere else and just not even make it to your thing. So I'm kind of give you a long-winded answer to this question, but the whole thing is that there's a method to the madness that we have Tuesday, Wednesday nights that we generally do this, hip, cool bars, restaurants, and shifting around every month to a different place so that way it stays fresh. And nice. if we reuse a venue, we'll make sure it's like several months later. And the other thing too is that a lot of these bars and restaurants, they're owned by parent companies or like restaurant group or bar group. So if we do good for one place, then we're like, oh, we got this other bar, this other place, Or
we're opening up a new one.
Exactly. Yep. And then plus two is in the hospitality world, people move around a lot. So we actually had a situation, we did an event at one venue, and the main management team from there went to another venue, and they called us and said, hey, we're over here now, doing an event here, And that's the thing is we just work our tails off to make sure that our sponsors get value, our attendees get value, people have fun.
How many people do you guys have? How many people do you guys have at a average event? Like 200?
Between 250 and 300.
Fucking a Tuesday night when they probably would be not busy at all. I mean, they'll be begging you guys.
Oh yeah, no,
they should be begging you guys to do that event there.
No, all these places.
You think?
Yeah, I mean, some places are easier to work with than others, but the thing is, that's our pitch when we go to like new places that don't know us or haven't had events before.
250 people on a Tuesday, sure.
Yeah, and
watch this video.
we get that.
I mean,
sure.
I mean, this event we just did Electric Hotel recently. I mean, we did like probably 320 people there on a Wednesday night in January. It was cold and nasty out, and people wait in line 15 minutes to get in, So it's like, it's kind of like we're getting to that point where we're doing something right, and now we're trying to just keep sharpening the saw and make it better and have people, enjoy it. But at the end of the day, I tell people, have fun first. Just, obviously, we all got business agendas, but just kind of don't lead with that. Just go and just make friends, have fun, and learn about the other person first. And also, I tell people this is a marathon. It's not a sprint. So don't go to an event thinking you're going to walk out with like 5 new leads. Just go and just make friends and have fun.
Or don't be that guy that just goes from group to group giving out his business cards and not even introducing himself.
Exactly.
You see those all the time, which is so weird.
Yeah. Some people, they definitely need to go to a class or a seminar and kind of make another business model we have,
Well, I think at the end of the day, I think what we're looking for here with the Appointments IQ business and how that led into the Tony P business is it's all about humanization. It's all realizing, okay, we're out there, we're all hustling, we're all doing the best we can. Let's respect one another and understand that about somebody else, and let's just take a step back and get to know what makes people tick. So one of the questions I ask is I always say, hey, what brings you out tonight? I think that's a softer question than what do you do? Which is the knee-jerk
first
question.
one always.
Yeah, because people, and one of the main reasons is a lot of people are out there looking for jobs.
Yeah.
There's no better place to get ahead of the line, in a job search than going out and potentially meeting someone that's hiring.
They get their guard up immediately if you ask them that.
Exactly. They're like,
I'm in transition.
What do you do? Yeah. I'm in transition, and next thing you know,
it's
inadvertently
awkward.
You made this person, feel a little awkward potentially because of the stigma around it. Whereas when you ask what brings you out tonight, they're like, well, you know what? I'm actually looking for some opportunities. It's like, great. What are you involved with?
No, I know this guy over here.
Exactly. So
yeah, and the other thing too is obviously people come to events because it's more of like a business focus, but I also what Greg asked, it's a question I use quite a bit too, is like what brings you out tonight, or how'd you find out about this? But the other thing I like to ask people too is are you from Chicago originally, or are you from somewhere else, or where'd you go to college, or what's your favorite sports teams? I'll ask a lot of different questions that have nothing to do with business at all, but I want to learn about the person. But then the other thing I'm doing too is I'm doing like little mental checklists in my head of, okay, who else in this room like has something similar? So case in point, I remember we had an event where someone said, hey, I just moved here a week ago. I'm from Houston. I just transferred to a new job. I know nobody in Chicago. I'm like, oh, wow, that's cool. Actually, I got 2 friends here that are from Houston. They moved here 5 years ago. You want to meet them? I'm like, sure. And I just literally walk up to each other. So I'm that person who's only been in Chicago for 1 week and doesn't know anybody. At least they got to meet someone who's from their hometown who lives in Chicago, and they kind of give them some pointers.
They went through the same thing, too.
Yeah.
They didn't know anybody at one point. Yeah.
Exactly. Or if someone says, oh, I went to University of Wisconsin, I'm like, oh, cool. I got a bunch of friends here. I got a friend who used to play on the Wisconsin football team. He's right over there. You want to meet him? Sure, So that's the thing is, yeah, we're there for business. I mean, I'm a sales guy. Greg's a sales guy. I know you guys are in sales, but when there's that human factor and commonalities that you work upon, then it just makes it more fun and more organic and not forced. And that's what we're going for. And something else too is with you guys growing your business here. I mean, you guys have been to our events, and we've met each other at other events. I mean, think about the team you're building here and the people that you meet out networking that become clients, that become partners, become employees. It's like it's just a more organic, natural way of meeting people as opposed to just using the internet or just blowing out a bunch of cold calls all day.
Didn't you meet Woody at a networking event?
Yeah, then he came over to our brokerage. Thanks, Tony.
Yeah.
Thanks, Tony.
You're welcome. Hopefully sell some houses for you.
Yeah. He's killing it, yeah. But you were talking about like you meet certain people and then you end up doing business with them. Do you want to kind of talk about like where you're at right now with like House and all that stuff?
Oh yeah, so just a kind of a funny little story. So last year, November of 2017, we had. So I guess last year, 2019 now.
You're still in 2018?
Yeah.
Yeah, me too, man.
So in 2017 November, had this event, and I had some friends that were there, and they said, "Hey, this is a cool event. You got a lot of people here. How many people in this room?" I'm like, about 300, but we have about 350. Wow. So how many people in this room can you sell software to? Like, maybe like 5 of them. How many people here do you think are buying or selling a house in next year? I'm like, a good chunk of them. And these are friends of mine. They're in the mortgage world. So that was kind of the way it kind of made me think about, I mean, obviously being Greg at the appointments at Cubits, we got the events, but the thing is that we get bored easy. So we like to kind of have like different things that we're working on and that all feed each other, And so these friends of mine said, "Hey, we're at this mortgage company. It's pretty cool. You should come check it out. With these events you do, it's like it'd be a natural fit, to meet all these people that could become potential clients and partners."
Yeah.
So, I, in my mid 40s, I made this radical change to move to a different industry, and it's been a little rocky at first, but having these events and being in the mortgage world, it all kind of ties together. And then actually switched recently because Anatoly, who you guys met, he's got a mortgage company, a digital marketing company, a video company. He actually approached me and says, "Hey, I love what you're doing with these events. We could use someone like you for these different companies." So by me and Greg doing these events and being hustlers and being out there and being very aggressive at recruiting people and inviting people, it's opened more doors for us. Because although, I'm working at Haus Mortgage and other companies under Anatoly, it's like there's ways we can partner with Appointments IQ and Tony B's. They all just kind of blend and feed each other.
Yeah.
And that's what's so cool about this world we live in nowadays, because back in the day, it's kind of like you work for this company and you're in this silo and that was it. And it's kind of like if you did anything outside of that, it was not allowed. It was not cool. But we live in this kind of like, free-flowing gig economy where you can do 2 or 3 different things and have
just like we do here.
Yeah, exactly.
We have the development. We had the brokerage construction company, now the hard money company. The podcast. It's like when somebody asks me, like, "What do you do?" I'm like,
yeah. And,
I don't know.
What time of day are you talking about?
How long do you have?
Yeah, and I'm gonna bust some crazy knowledge on y'all. So when I was down at U of I, you had to take your general education classes. So one section was non-Western civilization classes. So I took this introduction to Japanese culture class, which was probably one of the coolest classes I took in my whole college career. It was awesome. Learned all the stuff about Japan you didn't really realize. But there's one term, actually 2 terms, but this one that applies to this is called a zaibatsu. And what that means is having all these different companies, but they all connect with each other and feed each other. Even though they're in different industries or different components of the business, they all work together in this like harmony,
Yeah.
And then another term that me and Greg say every once in a while, it's called Kaizen, which is continuous improvement. So it's like you can't just be comfortable with what you're doing. You just have to constantly strive to do better, even if it's just like tiny little improvements or tweaking. Because if you get complacent, it's like someone's going to roll over you. So you got to constantly be just, working on your craft and getting better every day at it, because there's a lot of competition out there, and you got to stay a couple steps ahead of them.
Yeah. Do you want to go into the questions?
Yeah. Ask you a few questions, and feel free, whoever wants to answer. So if you had one piece of advice to somebody just starting out, what would it be? As far as like, starting a business or entrepreneurship?
Yeah. Well, this may not be the best advice, but
That's a great way to lead with it.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, there's a couple of, it's debatable, but my personal philosophy is just jump in. Okay. action. You know, I see too often, paralysis by analysis, you know. And Perfectionism.
Getting ready to get ready.
You know, getting ready to get ready, you know. Don't let perfect get in the way of good enough, you know. And some people have a real issue with that because
we always give the example of like when we first started the podcast, it was literally a microphone that plugged into like the bottom of the iPhone. Yeah. And then, we fucking love doing this. So then we spend a bunch of money on a bunch of equipment.
And you learn. That's how you learn. Because if you very rarely does somebody map out a plan and stick with it and get the end results they were looking for. Yeah. You know, it's like you're going to learn anyways along the way. So why not just jump in and go for it?
Yeah.
You know, and that's what I always tell people. And yeah, granted, you get burnt every once in a while
because fall flat right on your face.
Yeah, because you could have thought that out a little bit more, you know. But right, 90% of the time, you're gonna end up exactly where you would have anyways. But you've saved you started 6 months ahead of time.
Yeah,
and you saved this much money from not over planning or what have you. So for those of you that are listening, thinking about becoming an entrepreneur. Just go for it. Just do it.
Nike.
What's your best hiring tip or secret?
For me, hiring is real simple. Do they show up to the networking events? Here's the thing. Everybody's got an amazing Rolodex, right? And everybody is the most networked person you've ever met. You know, everybody has that same story, right? The question I have is, can you prospect? You know, because I've seen personally too many times people will hire on these VPs and give them 6-figure salaries, what have you.
Yeah.
And everybody's raw, super excited. And then after 3 months, the person has called through everybody they've ever known. They've exhausted all their leads or what have you. And they don't want to go out and do the grind of prospecting and finding new people. So for me, something that answers that question, if they have the wherewithal, tenacity to do the job, is if they're willing to go out to the networking events, shake hands, have conversation, be personable, and get along, So that would be my hiring tip: is part of your interview process, take them to a networking event and see how they do.
Or just try to poach all the brokers at networking events.
There you go, yeah.
It's like go right to the source and get those guys. What was the worst piece of advice that you ever got?
Oh, wow.
Don't do it.
Stick to your day job.
Wow, worst piece of advice. I don't know if this really fits in it perfectly, but I like a challenge. So when somebody tells me I can't do something, it makes me want to do it like 100 times more. So, ironically, when me and Greg started Appointments IQ, it's like I've had a few people saying like, hey, don't do it. It's a waste of time and blah, blah, and you're going to fail. And so, yeah, these are people that I looked up to, respected, were saying this. I'm like, no, we're going to do it. It's like, and like I said, it just ignited the fire that was already in me and stoked it even more to like really want to just go and just kick it in the ass and make it work, And so, yeah, I'd say the worst piece of advice ever told me was to not do something because it's going to make me want to do it more.
Yeah, don't let people put you in a bucket. You can do anything you put your mind to.
Don't be in the bucket with the crabs. They're just going to pull you down.
Yeah, I mean, this might get me in a little bit of trouble here, but and I was a W-2 employee for 15 years, selling software. Life was great, whatever, and then I just realized, okay, there's a ceiling to all of this, for me. And I was at a motivational speaker event one time, and these words just resonate. It's like she shouted out to the crowd. She's like, okay, who wants to be a millionaire? Of course, everybody raised their hand. And then the next question was, okay, how many W-2 employees do you know that are millionaires?
Crickets.
Let that sink in for a little while. Now, you know, again, nothing wrong with that structure or what have you. And the opposite of being an entrepreneur is definitely not for everybody.
Oh, hell
you
no.
know, so you got to really kind of figure that out, because whenever you step in and you make that decision of just go for it, I mean, it's there's no turning back. So at any rate, sorry,
No.
didn't mean to hijack the
No.
answer.
It ties into it.
Yeah.
What habits helped make you successful?
I got a couple I can throw out there, and I want Greg to throw out a couple too. I'd say probably the biggest thing is something so basic is follow-up.
Yeah.
You'd be amazed. You'd be amazed
It's all about the follow-up.
at how many people can get doors opened and get the meeting and get stuff going, but then they don't stay with the person and follow up and keep it moving forward and get it to the point of closure, you know? So that's probably the biggest things I've forced myself to do, is make sure I'm just, you know, because I use a Google Calendar, and I got my phone, I got my computer, and I always set reminders to, like, follow this person, follow that person, so I don't, lose track of what's going on. And I think the other thing, too, is that I mentioned earlier, is just realizing that, you know, this is, you got to play the long game, you know, that nothing good happens quick and easy, and you got to put the time in, you got to pay your dues. So I always just remind myself that, hey, it's like there's gold at the end of the rainbow, there's light at the end of the tunnel, and just got to even when the days are crappy and things are horrible, you just got to power through it, just keep pushing, because that next day is going to be even better. And the other thing too, and this is kind of like, you know, one of the oldest sales tricks in the book, is they say that, well, when you're, you know, it's 5 o'clock or 5:01 and your quote unquote your day is over, and you're just done. You're like, you don't feel like talking to anybody. It's like, make one more phone call. Like just force yourself to make that one last phone call before you call it a day. And in my career, it's amazing how many phenomenal conversations I've had and deals I've started and closed that happened because I made that one last phone call before I decided to just hang it up for the day or for the night.
Push yourself. Because
a lot of these people you're trying to reach, when it's after 5 or 6 o'clock, their day's over, and a lot of times they're still at work, and sometimes they'll answer their phone because they're bored and they want to talk to someone. Who knows? But it's just something where you just never know who you're going to get a hold of when the business day is quote unquote over.
Yeah, and I'll add one thing to what you were saying in regards to the follow-up, because now that my role as running a business has kind of flipped, and I do a lot of buying of services, right? Whether it be my accounting service or whether it be marketing service, et cetera, you're doing that buyer a favor by following up with them. Because whenever I see that follow-up note come through, I'm like, thank you very much, because you know what? I've been meaning to reach back out to you, but I'm doing a billion other things.
Yeah.
You know, and now you just made my life a lot easier, because you called me and you happened to catch me, you know, right in between a couple of calls, or, you know, so whenever you're following up, you're doing that buyer a favor. And I think that's something that really needs to stick in people's heads, because so often people think the opposite is true, like you're bothering that individual, and it couldn't be further from the truth. It's just because that individual is busy and you're doing them a favor. The one thing I'll add in terms of just like the day and good habits or what have you, for me personally, I think it's important to have something in your life that you have control over. So I'll elaborate here. But when you're running a business, I mean, you get thrown a bunch of different curveballs. You know, your email gets shut down because somebody's server is screwed up or something like that. You know, I mean, there's just so many random acts that throw you off day by day. I think it's really important to have something that you're in control of, and a goal that you're in control of. And for me personally, that's running. So I'm an avid runner, And I know no matter what, nobody can stop me from going out and knocking out, my 3-mile run for the day. That's a decision I can make, and I have some control over, and by doing that, it helps with the confidence and obviously the benefits of getting the exercise and all of that. But it also it clears your head and it allows you to go and deal with the things that aren't controllable.
Music or no music?
Oh, music. Yeah, absolutely.
So what's on your playlist?
Music,
Some people like to do it with the music. They say it's or the same song over and over and over and over again.
No, I'm a Led Zeppelin guy. So
there you go. Next question.
Why do you do what you do? What gets you through the tough times?
That's a great one. So I'm going to go with an old school book. Anybody who's listening and everyone in this room, there's a book you have to get. It's called How to Master the Art of Selling by Tom Hopkins. It's from like 1981. It's phenomenal because everything in this book applies today. I mean, even though the book was written in the early 80s, all the principles, it all makes sense. So there's one thing that he talks about that gets me through the rough days is what you do is you take a sales job and you think, okay, if I close a sale, it's going to be worth X amount of dollars. But to get that closed sale, I have to do so much work to get there. So this is a very rudimentary example of what he talks about in the book is that, okay, let's say if you close a sale, you're going to make $1,000. But in order to make that $1,000, you got to make, 10 phone calls. And you're going to get a lot of no's, But what happens is you make phone call number 1, someone says not interested. Next call, or like, take me off your list, and they keep getting no. Well, instead of getting like frustrated bad, you think, okay, wow, cool, I just made another $100 because every no gets you closer to that next yes. Now, this is, like I said, a very rudimentary example, but the point is that whenever we're having like those rough days and it's just, you're thinking like, why am I doing this? And this is so stressful, whatever. It's like, I actually welcome the no's. I welcome the people hanging up. I welcome when people say, leave me alone, or whatever, because eventually I'm going to get to someone to be like, hey, this sounds good. Let's talk. Let's meet for coffee,
Yeah.
And so if you take a dollar amount value and attach it to the rejection of each time you get rejected, it all adds up to eventually you're going to get that next close sale. And so it motivates you to just power through it because you're going to get there. And I said, How to Master the Art of Selling by Tom Hopkins. Awesome book. I highly recommend it.
Awesome.
That's one little piece of what he talks about in there, but it's something that I sticks with me every day.
Nice. Do you have one?
Yeah. Very, very similar to Tony, but this is out of the Dale Carnegie playbook, How to Win Friends and Influence People. And it's real simple. If you help enough people get what they want, you'll get what you want. So, let that sink in. And then another one that I hear that I always, that's profound to me is, givers gain. So if you want to take it and simplify it a little bit, but the idea is, get out there, pay it forward, and help other people, and it'll come back to you.
It'll come back to you tenfold, actually, because you put a lot of good positive energy out in the universe, and karma steps in, and it's not linear. So if you have a couple of people that you help out, it's not like this quid pro quo that, okay, I helped these 2 people out, and all of a sudden they're going to owe me something back, or it's going to come back from them.
You're not the Godfather.
Yeah, it's like it's like you might help
owe you a favor.
Yeah, help a few people out, but then all of a sudden, someone that you haven't talked to in 5 years will come out of the blue, saying like, "Hey, I'm actually looking to buy a house," or this or that. It's like just something random will come out of the blue, and it's the universe correcting itself. Because if you give a lot of that positive energy and all that out there, it's going to come back to you, but in waves.
Awesome. All right, guys, where can people find the events? Where can people find appointments at Q, websites, Facebook, everything?
Oh, yeah. So, actually, I know it's not going to be on camera, but we recently updated our cards. So, what we did is we actually have our websites being redone as we speak. It should be done in the next several weeks. And it's going to be pretty awesome because we're definitely making it a lot better than the old website. But probably the first thing to do is go to Tony P's networking events on Facebook. But if you go to the Facebook page, it'll be just our monthly events. But if you go to Tony P's networking events calendar, which is Facebook group, you'll be able to see a wide variety of events all over the city, probably like anywhere up to like 30 or 40 a month. So it's a way to see what's going on. I also got a Tony P's network events on Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn, Meetup. We're actually going to be updating our YouTube and Vimeo pages too, because we do a lot of video and photo content at our events, because we find that we share that with people who've never been to one, or if we're looking with a venue or sponsors, we can say, hey, here's our crowd, here's what it is, and people get a vibe and they get what it's all about, and they want to come. So those are ways to reach us.
Yeah, and we're always innovating. And I think one of the coolest things that was brought to our attention is the power of one video business card. So Tony and I both have one. And to get our video business card, all you have to do is text either Greg or Tony to 30500. So that's 3500.
Cool.
Yeah, thanks so much, guys. Really appreciate it.
Oh, thanks for having us. This is a lot of fun.
Appreciate it. Yeah.
I think we forgot Appointments IQ. Where do they go? AppointmentsIQ.com.
Yeah. Well, got a lot of businesses, but no, AppointmentsIQ.com, and our social media is not
within us.
Yeah, but it's the best way to reach us, and we can definitely take these conversations to deeper levels, and help people solve their business development issues that they have.
I'll put your guys' email address, phone number, and everything on the show notes. So check those out there. All right,
okay,
until next time, guys.
Thanks.
Appreciate it, guys.
All right. And that's it for another episode of the podcast. Hope you enjoyed it. One last thing before you head off, though. Please don't forget to subscribe, rate, and leave us your thoughts on iTunes. It would really mean a lot and help us reach more people. You can also find us on Facebook at Profits Over Wages Podcast, as well as on Instagram and YouTube. Until next time.